Hey, welcome to our episode of Whiskey Wednesday with me, Chad,
Christina.
and over in England, Tom, the crummy
Yep,
beard.
that's me. How is
Yeah.
everyone? You all well?
Good. Yep. We're
Great.
recording this on a Sunday afternoon, so it's like 100 degrees out already.
Ouch.
So I don't know what's a better appropriate thing to drink than Scotch on a Sunday afternoon. This is our first Scotch episode of this series. And like I haven't had Scotch in a long time. Whenever I think of Scotch, I just think of like Dewar's.
Okay.
Today we're talking about the Glenlivet 12. This is a single malt Scotch, and Christina has Johnnie Walker Black, which is a blend.
This is the one I think of.
Yeah.
When I think of Scotch.
These are kind of like you were saying, kind of like the entry level type Scotches. At least as far as like price point and all that.
Pretty much. So both of these have one cheaper in their range, give or take. I mean, I think Glenlivet might do two that are cheaper, but they're kind of equal. But they're one level up, both of them, than their absolute bargain basement offering.
Yeah.
I think they're probably the more seen because there's not a massive price difference and there is a significant jump in quality down, at each stage at the bottom end of the market. One of these I really like, and one of them I'm not so keen on. So this will be interesting.
All right. Which one do you want to start with?
I think you would be better off starting with the Glenlivet.
Okay. All right. So we'll just do it like a beer review. Let's do aroma. To me, it seems kind of sweet.
Does a little bit, yeah. It's
almost like a soda kind of smell. I don't know.
You get the sweetness on it.
Oh, you know what it is? It might be the actual. We got these the whiskey rocks in here, and it could just be the soda from the last time I used them or something.
No, there's definitely a little bit of a generic cola in there.
Okay, it's not just me then.
No,
kind of a vanilla smell.
Glenlivet's from Speyside, and Speyside, it's hard to pin down specifics because every distillery is different. But if you were to generalize it, they tend to be a bit more floral, sweet, honey, kind of maybe a bit closer to bourbon than the rest of the kind of Scotch areas. But it's more delicate, kind of less roasty, much more delicate notes.
Yeah,
but
I would say, yeah, like Christina said, very vanilla, which I would assume that's from the barrel character, right?
Probably, but it could also be in the malt.
Okay.
It depends how they're doing it.
I think let's give the.
This is finished in European oak and American oak casks. So whether those American oak casks previously had bourbon in or not, it could be from that.
Oh yeah, it does say double oak. Okay, I didn't even see it because we got the little miniature bottles. It's like the font is so small. In the old man vision. Yeah, so let's move on to the Johnnie Walker Black. Okay, this one, that's a kind of a night and day. Well, maybe not night and day difference, but it's definitely a different smell.
Well, I'm not getting sweetness on this one.
I get peat. I get like a smoky character.
Yeah, more I guess more barrel.
What do you think,
starting to get a bit of that kind of intense iodine thing from a lot of the island distilleries in that.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. I didn't even realize that Johnnie Walker was Scotch. I always thought that was just like an American, like Jack Daniels type thing.
It's probably. I don't know for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like the most produced whiskey after Jack Daniels in the world.
Okay.
It's definitely got to be the highest produced out of Scotland. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Zach Wilde's band Black Label Society? It's named after this beer or whiskey, sorry. Which, by the way, Black Label Society is one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, when you compare them, now I can really catch the floralness of the Glenlivet.
I just get like peat on the Johnnie Walker or like a smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it does have like a bit of a honey or floral.
When you come back to it, it definitely does.
Yeah, so sometimes the best way to reset your olfactory senses. Just go from one to the other,
back and forth. And I mean, it happens with everything, but Scotch whiskey in particular, for me, if I go back and forth between two different ones that are, even if they're quite similar, when you go back to the original one, you can notice a load more flavor change than you did first time around, which is quite interesting. That
Mhm.
Johnnie Walker for me on the nose, really one-dimensional. Like it's just a bit of heat, peat smoke, a bit of that medicinal iodine thing, and then but that's kind of one thing together anyway, and that's it. I don't really get much else out of it. It's not abrasively peated. There's just some peated whiskey in there, but it just takes over everything else for me. I'm not.
Do you know?
Not wild
Do you know if this is made with corn or wheat?
The Johnnie Walker.
Yeah.
So they won't tell you because it's a blend. They're owned by Diageo, who probably owns something like 25 Scotch distilleries.
Oh yeah, they own Guinness.
So it's going to be any of those. There'll be some malted barley in there for sure, because there will be some single malts that go into it. But the grain whiskies and the amounts of them could be anything. So
okay,
it's
kind of a mystery.
Who knows?
All right, well, you ready to dive in? I guess we'll start with the Glenlivet.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
As they say over there, cheers.
Wow.
It definitely doesn't taste as sweet as it smells.
Scotch rarely does.
That's so different from like the bourbons and the whiskeys that I've had. There's just a uniqueness to this one.
Yeah, it's funny because like on the nose, like we kind of said, it was kind of vanilla, floral. The taste is it isn't as really refined or nuanced in the taste as it is in the aroma. Is it me?
I think you might need to acclimatize to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think, especially once you've gone to the Johnnie Walker and then come back again, I think you'll find a lot more difference to it. There is a funny thing, especially in I guess lower quality Scotch, and by low I mean cheaper stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Not that it's not a quality product, if that makes sense. But if you're not used to it, you do tend to get hit by the alcohol in it a lot and not be able to pick out a great deal else. Give that a bit of time, and all of a sudden you'll start to see some floral, a bit of heather, stuff like that comes through from it's the environment that's made in that space side. It's kind of rolling hills, wild meadows, that kind of stuff. And there'll be a lot of that in there, but you need to be able to just get past that initial ethanol hit.
I took 2 or 3 sips, and like now I'm like actually tasting it. To me, it's like kind of woody, and it is kind of floral, and it has like a tiny hint of vanilla, but it's not as sweet as it smells.
Yeah, there's some sweetness underlying it, but everything else is quite prickly on top, so it's kind of hard to dial.
Prickly's a good word for it. But yeah, it's definitely. I'm taking tiny little sips of it.
That's the way to do it. Tiny sips.
Yeah.
If you flood your palate with it, you've got it's just gonna do nothing.
Yeah. So if you just kind of let it rest on your tongue for a second, you get all those floral notes. It's kind of perfumey.
I must have took like a huge sip because you still have a ton left.
Yeah, I'm only taking like a drop at a time.
Yeah, tiny sips.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of easily available and relatively cheap Scotch, I think that's quite a good one in terms of balance. It's rich enough, but it's not kind of it's not going to kill your palate off most of the time. There's still some time needed with it, but and the fact it's 40% or 80 proof, they normally come across a little bit watery when you've experienced some other stuff. But for me, that's still kind of hits all right at that proof. It's not too watered down.
Both of these are 80 proof, but they seem just off that first sip, it seemed to have like the kick of like a 100 proof or something,
Yeah, and
it's pretty intense.
Yeah, your bottle's never, obviously, because it's a miniature. It's not like you've had time for it to open and oxidize either.
Yeah,
which will be, it might be worth swirling around the glass quite aggressively just to see if you can get that kind of top layer of ethanol to evaporate and see what you think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it should be interesting because the Johnnie Walker has been sitting out a few minutes longer, so I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference. You want to move on to the next one? You want to drink?
Probably. Good idea.
I'll cut all that out. All right. Contestant number 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
I would say this one's very smooth compared to the Glenlivet.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Do you think it's smoother?
Well, I think because it's not like as far as like the heat and the alcohol. It doesn't like the first one seemed like boozy to me, and this one's like.
But is that because you've already had your palate
it's much gentler?
Do you think?
Yeah, this one has a. I mean, it's slightly smoky. Actually, like the aftertaste is kind of smoky.
Yeah. I think this one actually burns a lot more for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the other way around. This one seems smoother.
This is why there's so many different types of whiskies in the world. Everyone likes something different. Right? Yeah, so
differently.
I don't find the Johnnie Walker anywhere near as kind of like well-rounded as the Glenlivet. Like it's kind of, so I have reviewed this, but I've not put it out yet. So this will end up going out first. But try to dissect it to try and work out what to say about it on here. And if you dissect it, like if you just let a bit sit on the front of your tongue, there's loads of really nice, soft, sweet kind of honey floral notes, like we got out of the Glenlivet, but even softer, and it's really smooth. But then they're so muted compared to that smoky kick you get when you swallow it that if you're just drinking it normally, for me, that smokiness just kills everything off that was good about it in the first place. So it's not an abrasive one, but I just find it a bit lacking.
I can see why this is popular though, because I think like it's fairly easy to drink.
Okay.
Like this is like a basic, like cheap. Somebody who's not like a whiskey connoisseur might go for the Johnnie Walker.
I don't know. There's a harshness to Johnnie Walker that I'm not getting with the Glen.
It does have this dry, almost like kind of like an astringency to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just the peated that's the heavily peated malt that's in there, or the bits from the blends that are in there. And for some people, I think it just blasts your palate in a way that isn't really retrievable, and for other people, they can just appreciate the smokiness of it, and then it carries on. So, do you think the Johnnie Walker is more akin to like a heavily charred bourbon barrel for you?
No, I think the Glenlivet's like more bourbony. This one is like so much more smoky and astringent, and I mean, like there's like a tiny little bit of vanilla in here. Are you picking up like corn or wheat, like as far as flavor?
Not individual cereal types for me. It's I say if I kind of let it sit on the front of the tongue, then I get some sweetness out of it, but it's much more. It's very similar to the Glenlivet sweetness, but just it's mellower. It's really, really soft. And then that's kind of it. I definitely feel like the Johnnie Walker feels like it's 80 proof.
Yeah.
Like it feels a bit watery. Even though it's harsh, like it just seems splashy. It just doesn't quite do it for me. But I think that it's one of those ones that people will probably have tried that when they think, I'm going to try a Scotch.
Right.
And that will either turn them off forever or they'll love it. But it's so not representative of everything across the board. So it's like, I think if you don't like it, don't worry. That's not where everything goes.
Yeah.
This is my first time ever having Scotch, so I agree. If this was the only one I was having, the Johnnie Walker, I probably would not like it. Whereas that one, I would probably be like, wow, this is good.
Now, would you mix either of these in a cocktail, or do you think it's just better to drink it straight?
No, both of these are perfectly good for a cocktail. I generally don't make cocktails with Scotch a lot of the time, with the exception of Monkey Shoulder, but that is a blend that is engineered for use in cocktails.
Okay.
So it's very, very good in them. I normally just go bourbon if I want a cocktail. It's just my preference. The Johnnie Walker would make a really interesting long drink because you dilute that smokiness down, but it'd still be there. You'd still be able to taste it. The Glenlivet, I like it enough just to drink it on its own. I probably wouldn't change it up, but they would both definitely work in something. You probably want something pretty simple where it's going to show the base whiskey through, because otherwise you could, use anything. But yeah, I'm trying to think what would make what that Glenlivet would really improve.
Yeah, what's a common mixer with Scotch over there?
I mean, in Scotland itself, they don't. That's probably frowned upon.
Yeah, it's probably verboten.
In general, it's kept simple, so it'd be either you could make an old fashioned out of it, or
I've had that in a while.
a whiskey sour would be okay. And if you're talking about just a simple mixer, then it'd be soda water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You just plain club soda, not
do not mix this stuff with Coke. It's no good, honestly. It's
Okay.
I'll take your word for it on that.
That's a common one for bourbon.
So as far as we're not doing like ratings on this show because I just don't feel like qualified enough. I mean, it's just thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, to me, I would give both of these a thumbs up. As far as like which one I like better, I mean, I think the Johnnie Walker is like a little more approachable, a little bit more drinkable, but the Glenlivet is sweeter and has like more nuance to it. But it has like a more of a kick to it.
Yeah, and that kick is something that tends to deplete with age, and kind of as you go up to the higher quality versions, like the 15 of this will definitely be smoother than the 12.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so
we can do that next time.
Sure. I've been looking for an excuse to get a different bottle of theirs, so sure. But yeah,
I think the Glenlivet is the most approachable, coming as an amateur Scotch drinker.
Really?
I don't know. The Johnnie Walker kind of drinks cheap.
I think it's probably like the smoky thing is probably like because like a lot of people don't know like Scotch is made off of peat and it's a smoky thing and like it's supposed to have like a smoky, earthy quality to it. And a lot of people like if you don't know that, if your only reference is like cheap, it's Jack Daniels, it's quite a difference.
Yeah.
So some Scotch is meant to have it, not all of them.
Yeah. Which one do you prefer of these two?
I prefer the Glenlivet just because I think it drinks as a more well-rounded whiskey. I think there's more you can tap into a few different kind of styles from it. Like you could take this and then you could just go and buy a nicer or more premium Speyside whiskey and you could kind of see the correlation. You could see it improving, or you could go and get like a Highland coastal whiskey and you'll start to see like half of the same kind of shadow of flavors, but then an introduction of something else. But like obviously the Johnnie Walker is a blend, so this is quite difficult to say for sure, but because of that more peated nature, traditionally, or we'll say recently, Speyside whiskey isn't peated. There are exceptions. There are some that will do limited run peated versions of it,
right.
But they kind of sit as far away in the Scotch realm from each other as it's possible to do when you talk about peated and like Glenlivet, like they are kind of at opposite ends pretty much. So
I thought like Macallan 18 or something would be as far from Johnnie Walker Black as you could get.
I mean, it's not peated, so yeah, probably would be. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be a different thing. To be fair, I've not tried it. It's too expensive. So
yeah, that's like the one they keep in the liquor store behind glass, and they need like a key to open.
Yeah, I've got a bottle of the 15. I managed to get. Well, someone bought me that on a very good offer. My other half bought me that for Christmas.
Wow.
But I've not tried it yet, so we'll see.
Okay.
For the future.
We're going pretty long, so thanks again to Tom at the Crummy Beard for doing this show with us. It's been like over a month since the last one, so we didn't have a Whiskey Wednesday in May, so maybe we'll have to do 2 in June to make up for it.
Yeah, this was very helpful.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thanks for doing this.
Thanks
and yep, and maybe we'll see you in a few weeks or whatever. All right.
We will.
See you.
Cheers.
Cheers.